Welcome students. Welcome to the classes in sociology. Today we are going to deal with mobility and change, broader topic under sociology. Under this, today we are going to deal with the changes in Indian social system. Mobility and change are two important processes that take place continuously in all societies. These two concepts may appear to be very simple and always been used in our social life to refer to certain happenings and events, but a serious thought about it in a sociological sense will reveal their important features, factors and trends. In this class, we are going to explain the terms like mobility, social change, Sanskritization and their impact on Indian social system. Mobility. Social mobility is defined as movement of individuals, families or groups through a system of social hierarchy from one stratum to another. According to Giddens, social mobility refers to movement of the individuals and groups between different socio-economic positions. Lipset and Bendix define social mobility as a process by which individuals or groups move from one position to another between such hierarchical arrangements found in societies. Social mobility is essential because it indicates as to whether people have equal opportunity to achieve higher status. Class system is open and hence movement up and down is frequent and easier because it is an open system. It facilitates anyone to achieve a higher position by his own efforts. Class status is an achieved one. On the contrary, in caste system, mobility and change are rare and stressful. The group has to cross many barriers to move in the hierarchy. It is due to the closed nature of the caste system. Since the position and status of a person is ascribed and determined by his birth, there is no chance for change and mobility. There are different types of mobility we can observe in the social life. I will explain the types of mobility now. Mobility or movement could be seen under different types. Mainly it could be either vertical or horizontal. What is horizontal mobility? Horizontal mobility is just change in the position without any modification in the status of a person. An example is a person pursuing textile trade, changing his business to be a fruit seller. An individual occupying managerial position in one company switching over to another company in the same managerial level. In both the cases, they move from one position to another without any other upward mobility. The next one is vertical mobility. In the case of vertical mobility, that could be upward or downward. It brings status change. For instance, when a clerk in an office got promoted to a managerial level by writing an exam, gets better salary and also higher esteem. This is termed as ascending or upward vertical mobility. Sometimes a carpenter may enter into a business but fails to succeed in it. In this case, he will lose his previous status and also financial position. This is an example for descending or downward vertical mobility. There are two main types of social mobility. The first one is intra-generational mobility. It refers to social mobility within a single generation. If an agriculturalist by hard work becomes a big trader, it could be quoted as an example for intra-generational mobility. The second type, intergenerational mobility, is social mobility that takes place between two generations. For example, if the son of a mason studies well and enters into a medical profession, the occupational mobility has taken place over two generations. Therefore, it is called intergenerational mobility. Now students, we will learn about social change in a sociological sense. What is social change? Any alteration, difference or modification that take place in human interaction and situation over a period of time is called social change. According to McIver, social change simply refers to change in the human relationship. Max Weber defines it as the spirit of rapid industrial growth depends on rational use of technology, acquisition of money and its rational use for productivity and multiplication of money. The concept of social change is defined by Kingsley Davis as alterations that occur in social organizations, that is the structure and function of society. M.E. Jones describes change as variations or modifications of any aspect of social processes, social patterns, social interaction or social organizations. In sociological perspective, both social change and social mobility are two inevitable processes in the society. Now, we will see the characteristic features of social change. Social change is continuous. From the dawn of the society, the social life is subject to change. We cannot stop change taking place. The next one is social change is temporal. There is time sequence in change. One resultant behavior of an innovation takes time to modify the other spheres of life, but the change will be the resultant one. Change also has a chain of reaction. This is the next characteristic feature of change. Change in one aspect of life may lead to several other changes in a sequence. Next is change may be planned or unplanned. Changes resulting from natural calamities are quite unplanned and unexpected. Transformation of societies towards development are planned purposely. These are the two examples for planned change. Social change may be short or long term. The effects of social change is short term when floods of the season come. There could be long term effect of change when a revolution breaks out. Now, we will see the causes of social change. The first one is social problems. Social problems like unemployment and poverty lead to conflicts which causes social change. The next one is revolution and upheavals. Sometimes the deprivations and disappointments of people over a long period lead to social change. Cultural change. Cultural innovations contribute for social change due to diffusion of ideas and practices. There could also be non-social environment which cause social change. Deforestation and erosion, depletion could also be responsible for social change. There may be plurality of causation for change that combines some of the above reasons like social problems, revolution, conflict, cultural factors and environmental impact. We may even find resistance to change because people may be opposed to innovation, new ideologies, strong traditional values or ignorance. Sociology differentiates between social development and progress that have unique features. In sociological perspective, both social change and social mobility are two inevitable processes in the society. These concepts can be explained through two more processes that have been taking place in the context of Indian society. These concepts are Brahminization and Sanskritization, terms coined by the eminent sociologist Professor M.N. Srinivas, while doing research on the religious and social life of Coorgs of South India. This research was published in the form of a book titled Religion and Society among the Coorgs of South India. Sanskritization and social change. Prior to learning of the concept of Sanskritization, a basic knowledge of the caste system is essential. The caste system places Brahmins at the apex and other Varnas namely Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras at the lower level in the hierarchy. The system was said to be very rigid, with the component castes at the fixed place by birth. Since the position of a person in a particular caste is determined by his birth, changing his caste identity is impossible. Brahmins were the priestly caste, the Kshatriyas were the warriors, Vaishyas were trading communities and the Sudras were the service groups. Brahmins were pure vegetarians and teetotalers. Their lifestyle was guided by the principles of purity and pollution. There were restrictions regarding accepting food or eating food with another caste person, but at one point of history, movement between two levels in the middle hierarchy was observed. The castes at the lower level wished to rise in the hierarchy by adopting vegetarianism and lifestyle of Brahmins. This aping of lifestyle happened when a particular caste group was dissatisfied with the treatment they faced in the hands of the upper castes. Initially, it was Brahmins who were imitated, but M.N. Srinivas noted the Sanskritizing group adopting the lifestyle of the dominant both socially and numerically castes in that areas. Hence, he coined the term Sanskritization that replaced the term Brahmanization. M.N. Srinivas defines Sanskritization as the process by which a low Hindu caste or a tribal or any other group changes its customs, rituals, ideologies and way of life and claim a higher position in the caste hierarchy. A low caste wished to rise to a higher position in the hierarchy by adopting vegetarianism, teetotalism and Brahmanic rituals, beliefs and practices. This kind of adoption of Brahmanic way of life by a low caste, M.N. Srinivas called it as Brahmanization initially. Later, M.N. Srinivas preferred the term Sanskritization for Brahmanization. His preference was due to two reasons. One is that the customs and habits of Brahmins have undergone many changes over a period, and secondly, because this process of aping the upper caste happened with any dominant caste in the particular region other than Brahmanic caste. The agents of Sanskritization were not always Brahmins. Sanskritization is a broader concept that includes Brahmanization within it. The reference group of Sanskritization is not always Brahmins. The lower castes not only imitated Brahmins, but also Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras in different parts of the country. One more important point is that even tribal groups attempted to Sanskritize themselves. A well-known example is the Lingayat movement of Karnataka in South India. The movement attracted followers from all castes, especially lower castes, and was anti-Brahmanic in nature. Lingayats claim equality with Brahmins, and also many orthodox Lingayats would not accept food from Brahmins. Lingayats were also called as Veerashaivas, worshipping Shiva as their deity. Basava was the founder of this sect. This sect remains to be anti-Brahmanic, rejecting some major tenets of Hinduism. But Lingayats have some subcastes too, like Medars, Madiwalas, Gaulis and Kurbas within their own sect, which is against their motive of removing disparity. Another example from the south is the Smiths, who called themselves as Vishwakarma Brahmanas. They wear sacred thread, abstained from eating meat and drinking alcohol. But in spite of these adoptions, they are not considered to be equals to Brahmins. They worship their own gods and follow their own wedding ceremonies and not that of Brahmins. The Harijan castes in Mysore will not accept cooked food and water from Smiths, who claim themselves to be upper caste through Sanskritization process. This kind of hatred and avoidance are mutual between two caste groups. Now, we will see the social scenario during Sanskritization. The first one is mutual hatred between the caste groups. This kind of mutual hatred and non-acceptance is due to the resulting condition. What is it? It is generally expected that the Sanskritization should result in upward mobility of the caste in their attempt. But the end result is not upward or vertical mobility, but only resulted in a positional change, that is a horizontal mobility. That is, the other caste groups of upper, lower or equal status in the system should accept change of the lifestyle in the Sanskritized group. But in actual situation, both the upper group like Brahmins and also groups lower to them are not willing to accept the change both in practical situation and in attitude expressions. This process of Sanskritization might take over a period of many years or even a generation or two before they feel that they have reached at least a considerable status lift. Sometimes that particular Sanskritizing caste may feel enhanced status while their neighbors are not willing to accept it. For instance, in the observation of M.N. Srinivas, the Harijan castes in Mysore will not accept food and drinking water from the Smiths, although the Smiths are higher in caste hierarchy. Similarly, the Vakaligas, it is a peasant community, and the Kurubas do not accept food from Marka Brahmanas. Barrier to the lower caste imitating of customs and rites of the higher caste is the hostile attitude of locally dominant castes. Sometimes the Sanskritizing castes try to ascertain their position by claiming themselves to be Kshatriyas in their ancestry. The next one is Sanskritization among tribal groups. M.N. Srinivas has observed that Sanskritization is not confined to Hindu castes, but also occurs among the tribal groups such as Bhils of Western India, Gonds and Aravans of Central India and the Bahadis of the Himalayas. This would result in tribals coming into the fold of Hinduism, referring their group in a caste name. All types of Sanskritization processes are group based and not individual attempt. The next one is customs under change. Sanskritization, mostly explained in this lesson with adoption and rituals and customs, is based on the observation of M.N. Srinivas in his field experience in Mysore. The non-Brahminical castes adopted not only Brahminic rituals, but also certain non-Brahminic institutions and values. He illustrates it by referring to marriage practices, kinship relations and status of women. The castes in the lower hierarchy of caste system follow more liberal rules with respect to marriage and women. Among Brahmins, girls are married at an early age, sometimes even before puberty, failing which the father feels guilty. Marriage is dissoluble and widow remarriage is not permitted. Widows are required to shave their head and live in isolation. Brahmin women should be padivratas, that is, to render devoted service to their husbands, and chastity of wife is stressed. But in other castes, widows do not have to shave their heads. Divorce and widow remarriages are practiced. M.N. Srinivas is of the opinion that as the castes make upward movement in the hierarchy by way of Sanskritization, they adopt rigid sex and marriage codes of the Brahmins. It results in harshness towards women. In Brahminic way of life, conjugal state is considered to be a holy state. Only married men are permitted to do some pujas and offer pinda to their ancestors. Only a son could perform rights for the parents, which makes the position of daughter secondary. M.N. Srinivas says that the rules of marriage and the choice of mate based on Gotra has made it difficult to find a mate in recent years. The issue is further complicated by owing to the institution of dowry. The next part is rituals and Sanskritization. Sanskritization was believed to be the way to climb up the caste hierarchy by the non-Brahmanic caste groups, but generally there are three main sources of power in the caste system. They are the rituals, as it happens in the Sanskritization, B, the economic, and C, the political ones. The possession of power in any one sphere will lead to acquisition of authority in other two. But according to M.N. Srinivas, even political and economic upward mobility many times require adopting of major Brahmanic practices to be recognized as high status group in the caste system. Certain occupations like butchery, tanning, herding swine, handling toddy puts a caste in a lower position. Two more events could be quoted that are banned for other castes. Even after Sanskritization, the Vedic acts may be performed, but Vedic mantras are not chanted in the same original manner. This separation facilitated the spread of Brahmanic rituals, but not Vedic culture. Secondly, Brahmin priests officiating non-Brahmin marriages do not chant Vedic mantras, but only post-Vedic verses in Sanskrit. One of the functions of Sanskritization was to bridge the gap between secular and ritual rank. When a caste or section of a caste achieved secular power, it usually tried to acquire traditional symbols of high status like customs and rituals of locally higher castes. They also obtained the services of a Brahmin priest to perform rituals. They also started visiting famous pilgrimage centers, and above all they attempted to obtain better knowledge of sacred literature. When getting into the concept of social change, we should be familiar with the important features of caste system from a sociological perspective. Caste was a closed system that will not permit any mobility within it. To put it in a nutshell, that a quick understanding of caste system is required. 1. Caste is a hierarchical division. 2. It places restrictions on food. 3. There is restriction of social relationships. 4th one is restriction on occupation. 5th, restrictions on marriage. And 6th, the codes of purity and pollution. Under these rigid rules of conduct, mobility and change of caste groups could not be achieved easily. It had happened in certain cases successfully. For instance, Kallan caste with great effort over a long period reached a higher status. There is a popular saying that Kallar, Maravar and Ahamadayar by slow degrees of social mobility became Vellala. Having become Vellala, they called themselves Mudalayars. But certain other castes at the lower rank of caste hierarchy, efforts for mobility was not successful. Mobility, Sanskritization and change. The mobility aspect of Sanskritization is found to be superficial. The Sanskritized group at the end of the process found itself in a positional change, which is a horizontal movement. There is no structural change in the system itself. While individual castes make efforts to move up, the structure of caste with 4 varnas remained unchanged. Mobility in caste system is much slower and a gradual process than in the class system. It was more towards secularization and westernization. Social mobility, either through Sanskritization or under economic and political transformation, lead to the creation of new values, attitudes, relationships and new aspirations. In theoretical existence also, Positional change is not possible in the structural framework of caste system, but lower castes always seem to have a liking to adopt the customs and practices which they thought would improve their social status. Many non-Brahmins practiced Brahminical customs and rites, but the hostile attitude of the other castes was greater barrier for the status gain. Therefore, the mobility was only positional and psychological rather than structure. Students, I am sure now that you have got a clear understanding of social change, mobility and Sanskritization in a sociological sense. They are simple terms as we thought it to be earlier, but actually they are concepts with specific meaning denoting a particular phenomenon in the society. Under both class system and caste system, movement and change might take place, but we cannot always predict if it has a result as we desired or anticipated. Moreover, the change, positive or negative, will produce a chain of changes in the social system. Therefore, we understand that social change is ubiquitous.